But we start the hour with some business news. Amazon announced this week it's setting up shop in Minneapolis and Shakopee, bringing hundreds of tech and warehouse jobs to the state. Here to talk about the impact is technology consultant Isaac Cheifetz. Good to see you. Welcome to Almanac.
Oh, pleasure to be here.
What does Amazon see in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area that's attractive when it comes to our workforce?
Well, obviously, this town competes above its weight class in business. It always has. And pound for pound, it's considered one of the strongest IT business communities as opposed to technology vendor communities in the country. So
what's the difference between, just for people who are not tech savvy, what does that mean?
Well, the difference would be the companies in, say, Silicon Valley that build software, the Googles, the Amazon's an outlier in that they're both, but the Googles and the Facebooks and such, Oracle, they are building software that companies use. But those companies require people with just as much skill, just alternate skills in terms of leveraging those packages for business value, to add business value, which the people in Silicon Valley don't necessarily know how to do.
But we do.
We do, yes. And that's a competitive advantage we've always had that's coming to the fore now in this case.
What is a technology development office?
A technology development office is usually, sometimes might be called a center of excellence, and it's often when a company will say, okay, we want to create an elite center of development with some focus that interests us. What's really unusual here is I can't think of a precedent for a West Coast Silicon Valley equivalent company that chose to do that in the Midwest.
We hear so much pro and con about the state's business climate. Does this say anything about the big picture for the state's economy?
I would say that those are adjacent topics. They're not one and the same. They don't necessarily correlate positively or negatively. They're their own ball of wax. But I think what it does bring, I ought to bring pride and bodes well for the state, is that we have, it points to the fact that A, we are such a strong business IT town, and B, interestingly, the fact that Best Buy, the last several years, has been competing / struggling. It's important to remember that doesn't necessarily, that the people who are working there are even stronger for doing it. I'm often asked, I'm a consultant now for an analytics company, Trexan, but in the past I was an executive recruiter for technology executives, and people would say to me, should I go to Best Buy? They seem to be hurting. And I said, you don't care whether they're hurting. The experience, you're going into one of the very top retailers in the country. The experience you will get there trying to help them right the ship is invaluable.
Because of your experience as a recruiter, you say we're a big business IT town. Is the pool of workers large enough, or do you have to go out to recruit?
Out of town?
Yeah.
Both. I mean, certainly I'd say that the pool is large enough, but occasionally companies bring specialists in here, and you know the way it is here. It's a tough town to get people. You know, people don't like to leave here. People don't necessarily like to come here, but if they do come here, they tend to stay. So this town has very strong IT talent and IT executive talent. And when I used to do searches, I would usually counsel a client that you really don't need to go outside town.
What kind of a rep does Amazon have as an employer?
Well, that's an interesting question. I presume you're alluding to the New York Times series a few months ago, where they were sort of called a digital sweatshop. It's hard to know how accurate that is. I will tell you that historically, the tech companies that were really brutal work environments over time tend to grow out of it, because it's not sustainable to become a large company, particularly when people are not going to get rich off the stock in the same way. So there's every reason to think it'll be a pleasant working environment.
Does it make a difference that the company's not making money?
In the sense of?
Is it in terms of making a decent profit? I mean, I know it's been struggling a little bit.
Amazon? Well, Amazon's playing its own, I think, playing to its own tune. I mean, they're looking to basically take over, become the platform for global commerce, and that, if you look at it that way, market share, as long as they're not losing money, market share is, or profitability is not necessarily their most important metric. That's what they would say, I think.
Should be interesting to see what happens here.
I think so.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks for coming over.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.